It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books of the week, and there are not many to choose from this week. And normally Drew would be with us. We'd see his picture, and the camera quality would be bad, and you make fun of him. But he is under the weather and decided to still make the show. What's up, Drew? You're sick?
Yeah, I'm sick. I got a stomach bug. Haven't been feeling well the last couple days. So yeah, Pedialyte, crackers, and just resting on the bed. And but yeah, I think honestly the image looks a lot better than my actual physical image right now.
I'll say this right now. With what Marvel and DC put out this week, I'm not surprised that you're hurled over because it was not a great week. In fact, it just wasn't a good year. We've been hearing about all the struggles throughout the comic book industry in 2023, and we'll kind of cover this first before we get to the recommendations. Specifically, Marvel and DC just aren't really keeping up their end of the bargain. What do you think went wrong with them this year? Why did things all of a sudden just not click for anybody right now?
I would say two things. One of which is a doubling down on certain creators and giving those creators multiple titles and events to work on, and thinking that those events are going to be huge and big, but when they do come out, they're really not. And I don't think the publishers really took the time to really think if they should do these events with these creators. They were too busy thinking if we could instead of if we should. And I think
I'd say Josh Williamson is a great example. His events at DC, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths just wasn't very good, and there wasn't going to be anybody excited for Night Terrors after that big flop. And they went through it anyway, and they just basically shut down the entire publishing line, even though they had a couple of hot titles that had just relaunched at the time. And I thought that was a huge mistake. Not only with putting Josh Williamson on another event, he's doing another one in 2024, but also just to shut the line down for something that in the big scheme of things meant nothing.
And really hurt the retailers. I will say, case in point, Comics Elite. We have at least 4 long boxes of unsold Night Terror variants of any title you can imagine. Just 4 long boxes full. And no one wanted it. No one wanted part of it. No one wanted the covers. I guess one of the worst parts for us as the readers is that it interrupted their new DC Rebirth or DC Dawn of the DCU relaunch. And unfortunately, some of those titles, after the event ended, people may have forgotten about or one or two of them. And I forgot about one or two of them. It's like, oh yeah, they did relaunch Green Arrow. I forgot about that. But and the other thing I want to mention about are these events. Some of the events that they had were terrible. And if not most of them were terrible. Night Terrors, the Gotham War, Cold War, Dark Web, all these events just fell flat on their faces. And they didn't, I'm going to say it again, they didn't take the time to really think if they should do these events.
For me, I think one of the big problems with Marvel especially, at least at DC, Superman's got 2 pretty good titles. Maybe they're not great every week, but they're pretty darn good. And there's an alternative with Batman and Superman. Maybe Batman's not great right now. But if you go over to Marvel, none of their A-list titles are good right now. Avengers sucks. Amazing Spider-Man sucks. The entire X-Men line sucks. Wolverine kind of sucks. It's almost the same with DC. They don't even have a freaking Justice League book. And it's really hard to get a lot of sales and generate a lot of interest if your big mainline books that bring in the readers just don't bring in the quality.
Yeah, and case in point with the Justice League, I did I got a little kick out of it reading Green Arrow this week with Josh Williamson trying to cover his ass, because I think he realized, oh yeah, I didn't really explain why the Justice League decided to break up at the end of the Dark Crisis. And it was pretty much the Justice League trying to say, yeah, we thought it decided to move on and do different things. Like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't fly. The Justice League would not do that. And the fact that they're having the Teen Titans as this Justice League written by Tom Taylor, it's been a joke. And that was another big misfire, giving Tom Taylor a lot of these big titles, and just they're, for a majority of people, they're not clicking.
Yeah, so I think Marvel and DC, I really got to get those tentpole books up with some quality on them. Amazing Spider-Man needs to be a good book. X-Men needs to be a good book. Wolverine needs to be a good book. Batman needs to be a good book. And until you get that quality associated with all those top tier characters that actually bring people through the door every Wednesday, you're going to have a hard time getting anyone to latch on to the rest of the stuff, especially with the lack of quality almost across the board. So I can see why 2023 was a difficult year, and it doesn't look like 2024 is going to be much better. Now let's get into these comic books, because we don't have very many to talk about this week. 3 indie comic books and then 1 from DC. The really great book this week, the one that I highly recommend to everyone, is Duke #1 from Skybound, Josh Williamson, Tom Riley. And this is the kickoff of G.I. Joe in the Engergon Universe. Obviously, we've had Transformers. And Duke #1 was a surprise book for me. I didn't imagine they were going to take this track with the character to where you have Duke, who obviously made a cameo appearance, I believe, in Transformers #2, where he had to eject and kind of escape from a Transformer. Well, the government's telling him that never happened. There are no Transformers out there. And he's turned from this poster boy kind of a soldier or whatever to somebody that they're having to bring in and verbally reprimand and stuff like that. And he's like almost Mulder from the X-Files trying to find the real truth about it. And I thought it was a really, really cool way to introduce G.I. Joe concepts and obviously the character of Duke and Hawk. And we got Rock and Roll and Cover Girl. And there was another one in there as well. And I thought it was really inventive and really made sense.
Yeah, and like you said, the Mulder aspect, it's Duke pretty much playing him, trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes, who's pulling the strings. And we do get a lot of G.I. Joe cameos in this. We get one of my favorite G.I. Joe villains showing up toward the end. And especially at the end here, we get a couple more G.I. Joes are going to be showing up. I don't want to bring up their names, but I can't wait for the next issue. And the art in this, I'm not the biggest fan of this artist, but in the past, but for some reason his art clicks with this title, and you can tell he is having fun. And it's easy to tell when an artist phones in their work, and this guy is not. He is having a blast, and I can see it. There's a lot of great, political intrigue going on here. Listen, it's not something I really would have thought to get this from a Josh Williamson, honestly. And I'm shocked, and I can really tell that this is where his heart is, and not with a lot of his DC stuff. And if you really guys want to see Josh Williamson at his best, what he can do as compared to something like a Dark Crisis event, this is it. This is what he is capable of doing when he's on his A game. Duke #1.
Absolutely. If you did not get on that when you've been enjoying Transformers, go check out this. It's a wonderful companion and expansion of the Engergon Universe. Skybound is absolutely kicking butt and taking names when it comes to these Hasbro license that they got so far. And I'm very excited about that. Obviously, we've got Cobra Commander #1 coming up when I imagine they're going to introduce the full G.I. Joe team. The not too distant future, but that was a whole lot of fun. Definitely going to also recommend Gunslinger Spawn 27, Image Comics. Todd McFarlane, Dexter Soy is now the full-time artist on this one. Brett Booth is moving over to the mainline Spawn book. And this time, we've got this new character. He's kind of like a cybernetic outlaw. His name is Carl. Turns out he and Gunslinger Spawn have a history. The art by Dexter Soy looks absolutely fantastic. Not quite as good as the first issue that he did, but still just spectacular stuff. And we get the backstory of how Gunslinger Spawn and Carl met in the past when Carl was still a human, and he was like a bear hunter or whatever. And there was some things going on, obviously, in the 1800s or whatever. And they're kind of filling in the blanks when it comes to this Carl character. Why he's a cyborg now, they have not answered that one quite yet. But I did think it was very enjoyable and definitely, in my opinion, for my money, still the best Spawn book out there.
Yeah, it absolutely is the best Spawn book out there. And the art, honestly, is the big selling point for Gunslinger. Like you said, Brett Booth, he did the first, I think, 25 issues. And then now Dexter Soy, the last couple, they've been phenomenal. Dexter Soy's art it's got its own unique style, but it's still incredibly detailed and beautiful, much like Brett Booth was. And you can tell this is another artist. He is not phoning in his work. Every page, every panel is beautiful. It's action-packed. It's bloody. It's gorgeous. This is what I want from a Spawn book. And yeah, this character, I get a lot of Cable vibes with this character from this old acquaintance, frenemy of his from the Old West. Really reminds me of Cable. And I do like the twist that we're given at the end. Looks like might get into some fisticuffs in the next issue. But yeah, I can't wait to see what happens next. one of my new favorite characters is the Gunslinger, and give me more of this.
Yeah, definitely check that one out if you're looking for some cool Spawn action. That is one of the better written Todd McFarlane comic books that we've gotten in some time. The final indie comic book that we will recommend, TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures number 8, IDW. It's an homage to the cartoon and definitely feels like that. Eric Burnham writing, Sarah Meyer on art. This time we get like Wingnut and Screw Loose. That's the other character. We get Wingnut and Screw Loose, and they have a machine that they brought that they're going to turn people into zombies or whatever. And of course, April O'Neil like walks in on him and calls for the turtles. And while all this is happening, Mr. Og, who's like an imp from another dimension, is seeing what's going on, and he's offended. And then he gets really offended when he sees how often the turtles are breaking the fourth wall. So he like transports them out into another dimension and puts them on trial. And it was fun just to see what was going on. And the turtles do not get a win by using their weapons. They actually end up having to win using their wits in this particular story. This is why it's been one of my favorite series of the entire year of 2023. So much fun stuff to be had here. And I think if you like the cartoon, this is going to be a comic book you will love.
Yeah, Eric Burnham. He's we haven't really talked about him that much, but we do talk about his works. And he's a creator. I really feel like he needs to be getting a lot more work now because he's been doing a lot of work at IDW, not just with Turtles, but I believe he did the Ghostbusters series too. And that was really good. And I really feel like he's earned his right to get some more big name gigs, maybe at the big two, because he's a very good storyteller and he understands characters and he gets these characters inside and out, probably because he has a love for the characters and grew up with them. And that's what makes these books enjoyable, is because we know that these voices are true. These are who the characters really are. And he gets that. And he's really earned his place with if he can do it to get to a Marvel, DC, or Image. And so yeah, please do check out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures, guys. These are the turtles in their purest form, and Eric Burnham gets it.
Absolutely. And if you got a kid, you can actually share that with them, which is a breath of fresh air. We have no Marvel comics to recommend this week. I assumed I was going to be recommending Predator versus Wolverine number 4, the finale of that series. And it starts out like a house of fire, Drew. The first two parts of the story are good, but as soon as they get to the mansion, the story just dies and it never recovered. So
Yes, it did. Yeah, I was reading, like you just said, it's kicking off. I'm enjoying it. I'm digging the art. Ken Lashley, he's nailing it. Art is beautiful. But then it's one of those things where you're watching, I'll say the Enron stock, those latter days. It's just steadily going downhill with each page. And that's how I felt watching this book. The art, the quality just kept going down with each page. And yeah, by the time you get to the mansion, I have checked out and I do not care about that story.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I would still recommend the whole thing, but it did not finish off the way I anticipated. So I'm not going to recommend that one. But I will recommend from DC Comics, Action Comics Annual 2023, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Max Raynor. The end of the road for Philip Kennedy Johnson on Action Comics. He needs to make way for the Superman Superstars, which I guess Jason Aaron is, because he's going to be taking over with some Bizarro story. And this is the conclusion to Philip Kennedy Johnson's 2.5 year run that he had on Action, where he really salvaged the title, got the sales kind of back up, not to where they were pre-Brian Michael Bendis, but certainly got him kind of close. It was very admirable on the part of Philip Kennedy Johnson, and I think he kind of nails it on this one. I didn't really like the previous two issues. You could see that he didn't get to finish the story that he wanted to, the way he wanted to, and he was having to kind of rush towards the end. But I think he kind of brings it home here. We do get to see that the evil plan was for, is it Otho or Othel? Whichever one is the girl. She's going to be the vessel for this lineage of Bruce Wayne and Al Ghul that's going to come over and try to take over the world in Earth Prime. There was a little bit of a story thing that didn't really work, but we get big fireworks and Blue Earth gets taken care of. And I just thought it was a really good finale to the series, and I think it ended on a high note.
Yeah, it did, and it's one of the better endings to a run we've gotten recently, and I did enjoy it for the most part. Yes, the art is good. Art is very competent. It's not terrific, but it's competent. It gets the job done. But yeah, you can really tell that this was a rush job going through the pages, because trying to wrap up everything, all the small subplots, even with Bloodwind. I completely forgot he was involved with some stories in the past. and with Supergirl. But yeah, it's a fun, enjoyable, action-packed ending. So I got to give him credit for that. And it has me look. And you mentioned Jason Aaron earlier. He is doing a good job so far on Batman Offworld. I got to give him that. It's been great. The first 2 issues, but I can't help but be a little cautious and hesitant when it comes to the next issues with Bizarros. I'm very leery about where he's going to be going with that character. But before we get to that, this issue is a lot of fun, and do check this out.
Absolutely, and that will do it for our comic book recommendations. It was a terrible week. There just wasn't much to latch on to. Now, Drew, I do wish you and your family a happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and all that kind of things. What are the big plans in 2024? You got more comics coming?
I've got a lot more comics coming out. I've got another, like I said earlier this week, I was given another project from Rob Michaels. I started writing, and I can't wait to see. I can't get too detailed about it, but something involving an old character of his that was at Image, and I can't wait for this to come out. I had a blast writing this. You guys have a blast reading it. Stay tuned. I am not going away anytime soon. Sorry, not sorry.
Obviously, Drew and I have been doing the best of the week for a few years here on the channel. It's always fun to talk about the very best stuff. If you would like more information than that, I actually do that every single Thursday on the Patreon with a podcast I do from Jim from Weird Science Comics. He does all the reviews for DC, Marvel, Indies, manga, and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about all the important comics from all of the major publishers, DC, Marvel, Image, all the indie stuff. And we kind of let you know what's hot, what's not, and even the stuff that's in the middle, because there might be a book that I don't think is great. But once we talk about some of the details, you might be like, that might be the book for me. And there's a lot more information. That one, obviously, that podcast is about 2 hours in length. If you want to go check that one out, there is a link in the video description, and there is a free trial right now if you would like to give that one a go. And I do think you would probably like that as well.